Well, I want to welcome everyone and remind you that this is a course, a series to teach you to think like a CEO. There are hundreds and hundreds of MBA programs around the country. But they teach you the book, and this is about teaching you how CEOs think and how they are different than uh, the book learning that would get in an MBA class. And today I have the pleasure, special guest, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. I have Ryan Dotson. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me, John. Glad to be here.
So tell us about your career. Let's start out with your career after you left school. What'd you do first?
John, I was a CPA back in those days. So I left, had a master's of accounting, left and went and joined a small and then a medium, and then ended up with one of the largest CPA firms in the country, a company known as Arthur Andersen, and was pursuing that regular career track, from working with from small all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. I did taxes, so I did a lot of tax consulting, corporate tax consulting, and just pursuing that regular business track as soon as I left school.
Now, is it true, the rumor that Arthur Andersen went under after you left?
Actually, I was on that ship when she was going down, so it was a very interesting ride. I did tax, of course, I was in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin office, and so I'll say it's clear that was very far away from what was occurring down in Houston, Texas. I did know some folks that did work in the Houston office, and we could see it coming. My billable hours went from 40, 45 billable hours every single week down to less than 5. And
Wow.
I got lucky. The partners that we were in the middle of tax season, like doing compliance, doing actual tax returns for the corporations, but I didn't do that. I did consulting, and at the time, management thought that it was all just going to blow over. And they said, well, in the meantime, how about this? How about we give you a little severance package, and then when this blows over, we'll call you back. And who was I to argue? It was February. It was Milwaukee, and they offered me. I'd been there for not even 2 years, and they offered me 9 months of severance. And I'm like, okay, well, just show me where to sign, so I could head on out the door.
So is that when you decided to be an entrepreneur?
Uh, Made that decision back when I was working for a medium-sized accounting firm. When I worked for a medium-sized accounting firm, I got to see a lot of other entrepreneurs, and I got to see them. I got to see a lot of very successful ones, and of course, I saw ones that didn't do so well. However, back in that day, I was fairly naive. I thought everybody should be, financially astute, and they should understand, bookkeeping, and they should understand, cash flows, and they should understand taxes. I thought everybody should understand that. So I was not necessarily naive as much as I was very cocky in CPA, and thinking that, of course, I knew better than anyone else, and kind of made the decision that, hey, look, if these guys can succeed, surely I can succeed when I get out there in the world. So I knew at some point in my career, I would then own my own business. And when Arthur Andersen kind of came to the end, that's when I made that decision of, hey, look, I think now is the time for me to jump in and to own my own business.
Had you had any family members that were self-employed?
None whatsoever. All of my family, as far back as I can recall, they'd always worked for someone. And if you want to go back even farther than that, they were just subsistent farmers. They just grew enough to feed the family, and that was it.
So not even sell crops, they just fed the family.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And how did your, when I bring in new franchisees, one of the questions I often ask is, what does your spouse think? What does your spouse think about the opportunity? How did Tiffany feel about you leaving a CPA? I mean, she married a CPA. She married a guy that wanted to be a CPA, acted like a CPA, cocky like a CPA, and all of a sudden he's throwing all that away and and taking a big chance, right? So
Yeah.
how did she feel about it?
So the first time I mentioned to her, I could not sell her on the thought process. And so, of course, my first venture into my own business was, owning a franchise with the Liberty Tax Service. And I was, I was billing out at $350 an hour, at Arthur Andersen. So that's how much clients would pay me for just an hour of my work, $350. And so I ran into the opportunity and I tried to tell Tiffany about, hey, look, let's take a look at this. And she was like, no, she's like, how in the world is someone who earns, below the median wage of the United States going to afford to pay you $350 an hour? This absolutely makes no sense. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up working for a franchisee for that next tax season, just on a part-time basis. However, it gave me the opportunity to learn a lot about the process, and I just dripped a little bit of that into her ear every single week about what it was in the process and how everything worked and so forth. And I think it was that slow drip that got her to the point where she was like, "Oh, okay, all right, well, let's give this a shot." So her initial reaction was an absolute no. However, it did take quite a while working on her to get her to a yes.
So you left in February from Arthur Andersen. The next January, you took a job as a tax preparer.
That is correct. Yeah.
For another franchise. And what was your whopping wage that you made during that time?
I was paid a whopping $8.50 an hour.
Wow.
So plus the bonus for the tax returns that I completed. Yeah.
Wow.
And it wasn't. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it wasn't a very big office. I think that office did maybe 200, 250 tax returns in its first year. I mean, so it wasn't like it did a ton of tax returns, but it gave me a lot of free time. I was the only one in the office. It gave me a lot of free time to learn a lot about the business and to budget for my own.
So you only did a couple hundred returns. So less than 250. So what gave you the thought that you could do a lot better and prosper at this? Because that's not prosperous, right? A couple hundred tax returns, that's 2 a day. There's 105 days during the tax season. 200 is 2 a day. So what made you think that you could do a lot better?
Part of it was a little bit of the cockiness in me at the time. I mean, I could see what that franchisee was not doing correctly. And, I knew that I would have a lot more drive in it. For example, Liberty Tax, they have waivers. And so she hired a crew of waivers. And after, that initial crew of 3 or 4 quit, she was like, oh, well, that doesn't work. We're not going to do that for the rest of the year. And I could at least see at that point that look, you have to persevere. You're going to be thrown challenges regardless of what's going to happen. And you have to persevere and you have to work your way through this. You can't just throw your hands up and go, oh, well, I tried. Well, good luck. And so I could at least see that part of it. And I knew that, that if I was going to put my house, my money on the line, that I was going to make sure that I knew that it worked. And then also, of course, I had Tiffany as motivation as well. So.
Wife Tiffany.
Yes, my spouse Tiffany. So, because we bought the territory fee with cash. However, we funded the rest of the startup with a home equity loan. And the quote line to me was, look, buddy, you better not lose this house. So that was.
When did you turn the corner and decide that you wanted one of these for yourself? I mean, was it February, March, April, June? I mean, when did that you finally you passed over into, yes, I'm going to do this?
So for me, it was in February of that tax season. So, I mean, I could see, I was listening to the daily conference calls. I got to listen to franchisees who were successful. And at that point, I'm like, okay, all right, I'm in this. I can do this. I can totally see myself as one of these superstar franchisees. So let me jump in. Let me get going. Let me do this. And, in February, that's when it really hit me. And that's when I started really getting excited and starting to talk to Tiffany a lot more about it. So.
At Liberty, do you remember how many calls we did during the tax season?
Every single day.
So
We did a
how
phone
many other, I mean, there's over 4,000 franchisors in this country. How many do you think do 50, 100 days in a row of a conference call?
Zero at
Right.
this point.
So that set us apart. That was a differentiator. And how did you see the purpose of the calls? What value did you get out of the calls?
It was action steps that I could take right now. What I could do right now to improve my business. What I could do right now to get things going the right way. If, look, we were off to a slow start, here's what we needed to be doing. It was take action. It wasn't just, oh, well, good luck, maybe tomorrow more people will come in. It was like, no, these are the action steps you need to take a hold of right now to have immediate results in your business, because you don't have another day to waste.
So along about February, you began a drip campaign, proverbial drip campaign with Tiffany to convince her that you were going to become self-employed. You weren't going to go back and be a high-paid, cocky CPA. You were going to go for the gusto and go be your own boss. And at what point did you? I remember you coming to Virginia Beach before you convinced her. You came in for a discovery day. Do you remember what month that was?
So we had our daughter in May, so we came in July, I believe, while she was out on maternity leave.
And what happened? How did she react? And you didn't bring the baby, did you?
Yes, actually, we did. We brought the baby, and we brought my mother, and my mother stayed with the baby at the hotel room. So
yeah, I don't remember seeing the baby in the audience when I was speaking. So the baby was there, your mother was there, and you brought Tiffany to the event. And how did she feel about during and after the presentation?
So she of course came in with a whole bunch of questions, and I believe you labeled her, gave her a label about how many questions she was asking, because she was just like peppering them one after the other. It was like rapid fire from her. And you answered all the questions that you could legally, because I know some of them she was really pressing, kind of hard. However, the great thing about it is that there was another franchisee there, Frank Grimm, who was there, who helped validate as well. And we ended up sitting next to him, and he ended up answering, some of the other questions that she had. And he was a straight shooter. He absolutely gave it to her, just absolutely straight up. He has a military background, and that part was absolutely fantastic. And by the end of that open house, that discovery day, she had all of her questions answered. So she felt like she knew enough at that point to then, make a decision, which she of course kind of put on me. She said, "Okay, buddy, if you're ready to go, I'm ready to go. Let's go."
And yeah, Frank Grimm was retired Air Force, and he was a great guy, and he played hockey into his 70s. He was that tough, and he wasn't a big guy. He's like 5'8" and 130 pounds, but he would go out and play hockey. He was a consummate hockey player, and he started here in the Virginia Beach market and actually acquired he became an area representative in San Antonio, and San Antonio was the first areas that was fully developed in the United States. So he did very well. But you've mentioned Tiffany a lot, and we're going to talk about her a little more. To quickly talk about her career.
So Tiffany's background, Tiffany and I met at UNC Chapel Hill in business school. She graduated from there. She went and worked in sales for Philip Morris, selling cigarettes. We moved. She was very successful with that career. Every time she got promoted, we moved. So just for me to put it this way, we moved 5 times in less than 5 years. One of the stops included being in Atlanta, Georgia, where she left and she did get her MBA, because that was the only way for her to get into marketing. She wanted to do, brand strategy, brand marketing for a big company. Ended up joining Miller Brewing Company, which at the time was owned by Philip Morris. So she joined Miller Brewing Company, was senior brand manager on Miller Lite. She ran all of the television, all of the radio, all of the print campaigns for them back in the early 2000s. Then left Miller Brewing Company, went over, was director of marketing for Krispy Kreme donuts, and did that for a couple years before she then decided to leave Krispy Kreme and join me over at Liberty Tax, and join you at the corporate office as well. So
awesome. So I remember that she said, you can do this, but under one condition. If you don't do X, then talk about that requirement that she put on you.
So when we were going through our initial training, we were going through the marketing part, and it was kind of new to her because she, of course, was doing all of this, really big ivory tower, print advertisements, basically direct to consumer type of advertisements. It was not any type of guerrilla marketing, like having a waiver or going out and doing business to business or anything of that like. And when it was being described, when it was being described to us, she looked at me and she's like, buddy, what have you gotten me into? Why is this? And so Martha O'Gorman was there, who is the chief marketing officer over there at the time. And I was like, there's Martha, please go talk to her. And so she went and talked to Martha, came back, heard a story about a very successful franchisee who had wanted to market with watches, something like that, enough which he was convinced not to. He was convinced just to follow the marketing and operating system. So she comes back to me. She's like, okay, I'm going to give them a year. You're going to follow their marketing and their operating systems. When they say jump, you better jump. When they say duck, you better duck. You better be in lockstep with these systems. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And, oh, by the way, if you do not do 1,000 tax returns your first year, I am going to figure out this mess that you got us into. And so as we had a very successful start of the tax season, we had a very successful tax season. On April the 14th, I crawl into bed with, and I whisper over to her, I'm like, we're at 998 tax returns. And Tiffany says, without missing one single beat, she's like, well, you better damn well hope 2 people show up tomorrow. And 42 people showed up that day. We completed 42 tax returns that day. We finished the tax season at 1040 in terms of number of returns our first year.
A momentous number, 1040. What a coincidence. And where did you finish in the country?
So that year,
we had 200 new franchises that year. Where did you finish?
So that year we were number 10 for new stores that year.
Nice. And as a result, didn't we? Was that at the time we would give free trips to convention for the top 10?
Yes, it was.
Did that yet? Okay, good. And
you
had go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, we had a free hotel stay from it. It was great.
And you had a quality class. Who else was in your class?
Oh, my
initial training class.
Oh, in my initial training class, within my class alone was Corey Hughes. He finished number 1 that year. We had Sean York. He was in my initial training class as well. Eric Van Horn. A couple classes ahead of us, there was in the same year was Michael Debenham and also Dan Castellini. And it's really interesting to watch all of these folks. And also Eric Van Horn came in that year as well. But I believe he was also not only in terms of opening stores, but he was also working for the corporate office. And it's just amazing watching everybody that was in those 2 classes, what they've done in the franchising world since.
Yeah, most have left Liberty and gone on to great adventures. And by the way, Eric Van Horn's going to be my guest next week. So it's interesting that you mentioned him and focused on him. But let me tell you the story the story that Martha told about the watches. I love this story because our job as franchisors, and you're a franchisor now, and our job as franchisors is to give our franchisees the best system, the top of the line best system. And if we do our job, and we have, then your job is to listen. And we don't look for the smartest people, the most educated people, the most experienced people. We look for people that are going to follow the system. And there was a great franchisee that started a year before you did, and he started in San Bernardino, California. And one of our, it was the first year we went into California, and he called up Martha, and he said he had sold his business. He had a dollar store, and he sold his business, and he had just enough money to finance the franchise, come to training, and he had $6,000 left. And he saw an ad in some kind of paper or magazine that you could buy Liberty watches for $6 a piece. If you bought 1,000 Liberty watches, then you would only, it'd be $6,000. And he called up Martha and said, "What do you think, Martha? What do you think?" And she said, "Throw the ad away, follow the system." And of course, he followed her advice, and he was the #1 office that year in the country, in an area where we hadn't had any offices within 500 miles. And he was the #1 office because he followed the system. He avoided the mistake of being inventive and creative. I mean, I've been doing this 52 years. You need to pay attention. That's why you get a franchise, because you get a system. The thing you get in a franchise is really two things. You get brand name, and you get a system of doing business. And the system of doing business is required to be successful. So, Brian, you finished the year with 1,040 tax returns, and then you began. When did you begin to expand?
We expanded the next year. We added in, no, I take it back. No, it was 2 years later. So 2 years later, we ended up expanding and adding in an additional store. However, the following year, that was the first year I became an area representative.
Okay. So in the first year, after the first year, you acquired an office, and then the year after that, you became an area representative.
Exact opposite. So yeah, the first year, my second year, I became an area representative. My third year, I then added in a second office.
Okay. In what area? What area did you?
That was in Knoxville, Tennessee. I was a minority partner in that area.
So who were your partners?
My partners were Dennis Dirks and a couple other gentlemen who Singh Chavla in Milwaukee, and one of his other partners.
Wow. So other Liberty franchisees.
Correct. Yep.
So you were in 1 year, and all of a sudden you're partnering with 3 other franchisees. How did you make those relationships?
Those relationships were made just because we were all talking together. Okay? We had all kind of come into Liberty. I think Singh came in. Dennis was in a few years before me, but Singh came in the year after me. That same year, and we had just we were all just getting around talking shop, and got to know each other well. We thought it would be a great idea to get into the AR world. So
first year, 1 office. Second year, 1 office, and you were a minority partner in an area in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then third year, you added a second office. How far was that from your first office?
The territory right next door. So we're talking less than 5 miles.
So then what happened? Then you expanded further. So that was 3 years. After, in your third year, you had 2 offices and a minority partner in an area in Knoxville.
Correct.
Then what happened?
So in our third year, after the end of my third year, that was when Tiffany had the opportunity to join Krispy Kreme, and it gave us the opportunity to move from Wisconsin down to North Carolina. And so we ended up selling the 2 of the stores, one of them to Singh, the other one to a new franchisee that was coming in, which is the advantage of being in a franchise, of course, is that you already have a built-in set of buyers. And, they're buying that brand. They're not necessarily buying Ryan's tax service. And so it made it really easy to do that. So I sold those stores, took that money, invested it into the AR area, into the central North Carolina, where we were moving into, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point. North Carolina, and so then became an AR there, and I did not have any partners in that group. Had that for a year. And after that, Tiffany ends up joining us. She ends up opening up a Liberty Tax office in that area. And also that same year, we ended up buying the minority partners out of the Knoxville area. And so we were then majority partners in the Knoxville, Tennessee AR area.
You're going too fast for me. Let's backtrack a little. Right?
All right.
I mean, I can't even write that fast. Right?
Okay.
So you're not doing the drip campaign you did with Tiffany. You're going pretty fast. So, one thing you said that's very interesting and very poignant is that you have ready-made buyers. The other franchisees around you are likely buyers if you're part of a franchise system. So you have the other franchisees around you, but you also have likely partners, right? You described a partnership situation, and it isn't just partners in the sense of ownership. It's partners in the sense of, when you are a franchise, you have the franchisor and the franchisee they have several relationships, but one of the relationships is partnership. But you also have all the other franchises that are your partners, not just the franchisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you learn from both of them. So you said you sold 2 stores. You sold all of your stores in Milwaukee. You just had 2?
Yep, just those 2. Sold them both.
Okay. Then you moved back, and the reason you liked moving to Winston-Salem, Greensboro, why was that a special place for you to move?
So that's where Tiffany grew up. I grew up in a tiny town 30 minutes outside of Winston-Salem, and at that time, my grandfather was still alive. And so we were moving down there with our 2 daughters, ages 2 and 4 at the same time at that point. And, it made, life a lot easier because, number one, we were down around the grandparents that very much got to be part of our children's lives, which that part was absolutely great and fantastic. And the second part about it is that, it got us home, got us out of that cold weather in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I didn't have to worry about snow blowing off my sidewalk every other day.
So when you acquired the area, the Winston-Salem Greensboro market, how many, do you recall how many offices were there?
4, just 4.
And when you peaked at, you've since sold it, but at the peak, how many offices were there?
44.
44. So you went from 4 to 44. And over how many years did that take you?
That took us just under 5 years to get to 44.
And do you remember the royalties, when the peak royalty amount?
Total royalties at that point was pushing, between all those stores, it was pushing probably $650,000 to $700,000.
And what was it? And do you remember what it was when there was 4 stores when you acquired it? Like 30,000 or something?
Not even 30,000. It was less. I want to say it was even in the low 20s. Those 4 stores were not performing very well.
So when you started, what was your total investment out of pocket?
When I started with Liberty in total, or when I started with that AR?
When you started back in your first office where you did it 10,000 or 1,040 returns. That was all-in investment.
The total all-in investment was $40,000, pushing 40, maybe 45,000.
And 8 years later, you are the area representative in Winston-Salem, Greensboro.
Yeah.
You now own Knoxville. We didn't even get to Knoxville. You're worth millions, and the total investment was $40,000.
Yes, sir. Yeah, pretty amazing.
And okay, so you owned Winston-Salem, Greensboro. You bought your partners out of Knoxville. Why did you do that? Why did you buy them?
Well, I mean, the majority partners were in charge of having those day-to-day interactions with the franchisees, and the franchisees, were not responding well. They weren't listening, and their performance wasn't there. And I wasn't happy with the way that partnership was progressing. And so, we can't. I saw the opportunity there to really grow that area out, and we kind of came to him and say, hey, look, let's agree upon the number as to what this area is worth. Now, here's a decision for you to make. Either you need to buy us out at our percentage of this number, or we'll buy you out at this percentage of the number. And, I was going to be happy either way, either direction it was going to go. Either I was going to get my money out of an investment that wasn't performing, or I was going to, take this underperforming area and turn it around, kind of like the performance that we had in the in the North Carolina area, and make it perform better. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I thought it could perform better, and that's part of the reason why we came to them with an offer.
So you bought them up, and now at about the same time, you opened an office. Was it you or Tiffany that opened an office in Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Winston-Salem area?
So it was Tiffany at that time who opened the office. I, of course, was there to help, but she was the main one that was running.
I think she'll tell me that she didn't need your help. If I asked her whether she needed your help, what would she say?
The story that she loves to tell about that, John, is that my first year compared to her first year owning a store, I did more tax returns. However, she did more revenue her first year. So even though she did fewer tax returns than I did, I believe she did finish in like the mid 900s. However, she had a lot more revenue than I did. And every time I would try to poke at her with that, she would say, quote unquote, you know what? Take your tax returns to the bank, and I'll take my cash to the bank, and we'll see which one the bank deposits.
Yeah, I know which one I want. So you're not in a big city, right? You're in a rural, kind of a rural area. Her office.
Yeah.
What city is it? What's the population?
So the city is Asheboro, North Carolina. It is the geometric center of North Carolina. Population 18,000. I tell folks it's famous for three things. Number one, has the Western Hemisphere's largest zoo there, the North Carolina Zoo there. They measure it by square miles in terms of the zoo. And then the other two things is that they manufacture a couple things there that everybody would know. Number one, they manufacture Spanx, which is that tight form-fitting undergarments that women wear that make them seem slimmer. And the other thing they manufacture in Asheboro are red Solo cups.
What kind of cups?
Red Solo cups. So there's a country song written about red Solo cups. So
Awesome. So 18,000 people, and she grew the store to, when it peaked, how many tax returns was she doing?
Right at 2,300 tax returns.
Do you have any competitive numbers from? Of course, the largest preparer when you got there was what company?
So the largest preparer there was H&R Block. They had 3 locations. When we went there, they were doing a combined between the 3. They were doing 3,200 tax returns. There were 5 There were 5 Jackson Hewitts at the time, doing maybe a combined 2,400 tax returns.
And what happened to the competitors as Tiffany went from 900 to 2,300? How did she pass them at any point in their multiple office situations? In one office, yes. She had one office. They had 3 and 5.
Absolutely. So Jackson Hewitt ended up consolidating down to just one office, which is now located in a Walmart. They do maybe 300 or 400 tax returns. The H&R Blocks, they still have 2 of their 3 locations. However, those 2 locations combined do about 1,900 tax returns. So our one office still beats H&R Block's 2 offices in the same population of 18,000 town.
And why is that? Why? I mean, they started out, they had brand name. When you got there, and you opened, they had brand name, right? H&R Block had been there for 30 years, and Jackson Hewitt had been there for 7 years, and they had brand name. They had 3 offices and 5 offices. What you have to have a differentiator. What made you be able to surpass them? What were the differentiators?
The main one, to me, John, at the end of the day, were the customers. Not the customers, but our tax preparers. It was the customer service that they were provided. We had a very welcoming, a very family-friendly, environment. You weren't by all means, a number. We met people out in the parking lot and welcomed them into the store. And while they were there, we gave them any type of soda that they wanted, any type of snacks that they wanted. We treated them like family. We treated them like if someone was coming over to our house. And our customers, they reacted very well to it. And they loved that part about it. They loved coming in knowing that they're family. So it's just that level of customer service and exceeding their expectations, and by all means exceeding the service level they were getting over at our competitors.
It seems to me I recall a story about sitting back up. Is there a little ledge in your office where it goes up, or is it all flat?
It's all flat.
Okay. It seems to me that I remember a story that someone's sitting in the back watching customers come in and then reacting. What kind of, did you have special, because first impression is so important. Did you have special rules related to first impression?
So yes. So, when someone came to the door, if we didn't have a receptionist that was walking in, that person had to be recognized within 3 seconds. And, part of the way that we train that within our store is, when we're going through those procedures, we're going through policy and procedures with all of our tax preparers and the rest of our staff that's going to be working with customers that year. We would always do something like, hey, look, you have to recognize, just don't let someone stand up there. We have to recognize them, instantaneously when they come in the door, because I would do this, which is just 3 seconds, but it seems like it is an eternity. Or like you can't make your customers feel that way. You have to recognize it. So even if you're with a customer, another customer, you're sitting at the desk, just looking up, making that eye contact and saying, hey, look, I'll be with you. I'll be with you within a moment, and just recognizing their presence. And that went a long way.
At Liberty, we had a film called Closing the Sale. Was that, were you guys involved with that?
Yes. So Tiffany and myself worked with some other franchisees on developing a close rate, because as we were growing that office, at one point we were doing about 1,300 tax returns, and we were challenged by Michael Debenham. He came in and challenged us one year during the off season. He's like, that's great, you're doing 1,300 tax returns, but how many returns are you starting that you're not finishing? And it came down to a close rate. And we're like, oh, no, we're great. John, we looked at it, and, we were only closing at 74%. So 1 in 4 customers that were walking in the door that we had paid, $45, $55 in marketing costs to get them to walk into that door were not even finishing their tax return. And so from there, we started putting a lot of emphasis on the entire customer journey that they go through within our office. And even from the time before they even walk into the door to when they come in, and we broke it down to step by step as to what we expect our tax preparers and our staff members on how we expect them to treat their customers, to treat our customers, and even including, not only greeting them and bringing them in and through the tax preparation process, but even setting expectations after they leave. Very much part of that customer journey. And we focused on it fairly hard. And we took our close rate from 74% all the way up to 98.6%.
Wow. And of course, Debenham, another partner that you acquired he had a big store in Alaska that did over 3,000 returns in Juneau, Alaska. and a great entrepreneur, very successful. He owned the whole state of Alaska at one point, and the state of Hawaii. That's they're believe it or not, they're very far apart. So so then you expanded at least one more time, right? You Andy Banker, tell us about another partner, another franchisee in Kansas City. Hopefully we'll have him on as a guest soon. But tell us how you got involved with a partnership with Andy Banker.
So Andy and I would always, we would always connect over the summer, whether that was at a convention or whether it was at some other trainings. I had a lot in common with Andy. And, as we were growing and, we were growing the AR area, growing the store, growing the AR areas, we were just looking for other opportunities that existed out there. And, we kind of stumbled upon the Nashville, Tennessee AR area. And we decided to become 50-50 partners with that. And, how did I know Andy? Well, the only way I knew him was just meeting him through other events and recognizing that he was a top performer as well. And, he had some very good sales skills, franchise development skills. My background is very much from the operations end of things. And, of course, Tiffany can do both because she's a superstar. And so, we joined forces there. Same thing. It was a rather small area. There was a rather large area in terms of AR area, but it was rather small in terms of, there was only 4 offices there when we decided to jump in and join it. And we jumped in and joined it. And I think within 3 years, we already had it up to 24 stores. So
awesome. So now we need to get on to where you are now. You've recently, have you sold most of what you own back to the company?
Correct. We've sold every single one of our AR areas back to the company, which is kind of part of that life cycle. But as you pointed out earlier, it was, we did quite okay from a financial standpoint. So I don't have any complaints there. We still have the Liberty Tax Office in Asheboro. We have a couple managers, Judy and Laura, who run it just absolutely fantastically with, hardly any input from Tiffany or myself. And so, we have no desire to let that one go anytime soon. But in 2019, as I saw the end of the AR areas kind of coming down the road, we decided to make a decision as to what is next.
And what is next? What are you doing now?
So we came across a concept called the Salt Suite. And what the Salt Suite is that it is a franchise that delivers dry salt therapy in basically salt caves. And I'll describe a little bit more about that later. However, when we found it, it had already been started. It was started by a couple folks down here in South Florida. They started it 10 years ago. And they had one very successful location, and then they decided to grow to another location, and that went very well. And then they got encouraged to, oh, hey, look, this is great. You have to franchise this. And so they got into franchising, and they only found out that being a franchisor and running a store are two completely different skill sets. And they take different types of tax, and they were not ready for that part. And so when Tiffany and I came in, we were actually looking at just becoming a franchisee. However, as we were going through the process, they kind of approached us about buying them all out as the franchisor. And we did our research and we did our due diligence, and we really like it. We really like the business model. We like that it's recurring monthly revenue. We like that it's low touch, no touch. And our fixed costs are fairly, once they get in, they're set, and they don't really change. Even with an increase in volume, they don't change that significantly. And that's what we really liked about the business model. And so we decided to give it a go. So it's called the Salt Suite, SUITE. And what we deliver is that we deliver dry salt therapy. And what dry salt therapy does is that we take pharmaceutical grade salt, we crush it up to 1 to 3 microns. And so keep in mind, your hair is about 30 microns wide. And so this is very, very small. And folks go into a nice, relaxing room that looks like a salt cave. And they sit down in a nice chair and they just either breathe it in or they let it get on their skin because the salt's antibacterial, anti-inflammatory properties. It helps folks that are suffering from any type of respiratory issue, whether that is allergies or asthma, COPD, sinusitis. Those are the main ones that we see a lot of customers come into Enforce. If they have skin issues such as eczema or psoriasis, it can all means help with that. And then it's also for folks that are just like, they're athletes and they're looking to increase their lung capacity because it's going to remove any inflammation that you have in your lungs. And so we have a lot of athletes. We have professional MMA fighters. We have professional tennis players, professional auctioneers, professional opera singers. All of these folks as clients, they're coming in because they want better respiratory health. And so we've been in that. We got involved in that in November of 2019. And of course, we had to get through the COVID year and a half. However, now we're at the part, we started with 6, and right now, by the end of this year, we'll be at 9.
So you mentioned casually, you said it looks like a salt cave. I think you can believe that most of us don't know what a salt cave looks like.
If a fair point. So salt therapy was started back in the late 1800s. There was a Polish health minister who realized there was this one class of workers that not only were they healthier, they were not sick, they looked younger than their counterparts, folks that were working in factories or working in other types of mines. And he realized that these folks were salt miners. They were down underneath the ground mining, effectively table salt. And this was in Poland. And so he ended up buying out the mine, and of course continued to mine. But then he set up a spa down there where other folks could come in. So when I say it looks like a salt cave, what I'm meaning is that we have, when you walk into our salt suite, we have salt that is on the floor. We have salt that is on the walls. I mean, it literally looks like you're in a white salt cave, and we have this machine that just recreates that microclimate of an actual salt cave.
And how big is the room? And do you get your own room, independent room, or are you in a big room with a lot of people?
So for the majority of folks, we do offer, you do have your own, you do sit in a room with other folks. Most of our suites will hold between 5 to 7 clients in there. However, a couple different things about it. Number one, we've been doing dividers in between our clients. So there's dividers in between the chairs. We've been doing that since 2011. It just happened to be that we were 6 feet away from folks. And, some folks will say, hey, look, I'm worried about the virus that is out there and so forth. But you know what? You're sitting in a room with millions of microscopic particles of salt floating around. If anyone would happen to cough or to sneeze and they let something out, if it lands on anything, it's going to die. If it even makes it over to you, if it makes it through all the salt, because salt kills, all of these things. There are studies that have been put out there that say that, like these, salt rooms and these salt caves are cleaner or have less, germs in them than operating rooms.
And what's the total startup cost for a new franchise?
So on our startup costs, it can range. It all depends upon how big of a space that you end up going into and how much tenant improvement allowances we get from the landlord. And we can go anywhere from as small as 1,200 square feet to as large as 2,300 square feet. And that makes it a fairly wide range. So on the low end, $199,100. On the higher end, $425,550. However, my goal as a conservative accountant is to make sure that number is at a point where no one's going to exceed that number.
So is the reason the limit is 2,300 is that's all that one machine can handle?
I'm sorry, I missed that question. What was that again, John?
You said the limit was 2,300. Is that because of that's a limit of each salt machine?
Yeah, no, not necessarily limit the machine because we'll put multiple caves or suites within the same facility. So the majority of our facilities have at minimum 2 adult rooms and 1 kids room, and it just allows us to get more clients in and out at a constant rate of folks. And so if we end up with 2,300 square feet, we're just going to add in more. We're going to add in more of our suites. Instead of having 3, we may have 4 salt suites in there. Typical square footage of one of our rooms usually floats in the 250 to 300 square foot plan. So that's how much the room is, where you're having 5 to 7 individuals in there. So if we just end up in a bigger space, we're just going to make better use of the space, because at the end of the day, it really comes down to the location and the rent. We try to float in between a great float in between of not paying way too much in rent but also having a really good location, and we let the square footage kind of dictate it out from there. So like in Charlotte, we're in just over 1,200 square feet, but we have a location in Voorhees, New Jersey, that's pushing 2,300 square feet, but they're paying about the same in amount of lease.
So is visibility an important marketing component?
So we do like, because not a lot of folks have been exposed to salt therapy, we do like to be in a fairly well-trafficked shopping center. That does help. We get a lot of folks that will actually walk in and go, hey, what is this? We have some really nice graphics that we put on the outside of our locations that kind of show what is happening on the inside. And some of those other graphics will also talk about some of the conditions that we help improve with salt therapy. And so, yes, we do want some walk-by traffic. We do want folks coming by and popping their head and going, okay, what is this? And that just gives us the opportunity for us to get them to take a session.
Do you have a major competitor?
No, we're the only franchise, in our field. There are other salt caves that are out there. However, a lot of them may be attached to like a high-end spa at the JW Marriott or the Waldorf Astoria, or our only other competitors that could be out there would be, some mom and pops. However, the mom and pops, they're out there, they're kind of out there on their own. Whereas, we've been in this business for 10 years. We have a model that we know that works. And, that's, as you mentioned earlier, is that, our goal as a franchisor is to deliver a solid operating and marketing system, so we can deliver clients at the lowest acquisition cost per client, so that our franchisees can benefit from that. And we've been in it for 10 years, so we know what the model is.
So you're the McDonald's or the Subway. You're the King Kong of your industry.
Yes, we are.
And growing fast. Going to grow by 50% this year.
That is correct. Yeah.
And what's your goal? Where do you want to be in units in 5 years?
And so, in 5 years, we want to be just over 400 units. And so nice. That means we're going to have some pretty rapid growth, coming up.
I'll ask you at the end if you have anything to add, but in the meantime, I'd like to throw it open for a few questions. If anyone has questions for Ryan or I, just speak up if you have a question. You were so thorough, they're not going to have questions.
It's a good thing.
We'll give them about 1 more minute. In the meantime, tell me quickly about your children.
So I have 2 daughters who are 18 and 20 years old. They are freshmen and sophomore. One of them's at UNC Chapel Hill, where Tiffany and I met at undergraduate. She happens to be 4th generation in our family to go to school there, which is awesome. So she's studying history, and she is a spitting image of Tiffany. You would not even know that I was even involved with it, because it just looks like Tiffany cloned herself. And then our other daughter, Ritter, she is a freshman at North Carolina State University. And she's also fourth generation to go to NC State, and same university that her grandfather went to, and is going in, or great grandfather went to, and is staying in a dorm where her great grandfather's was named after her great grandfather's ROTC teacher, and it was also the dorm where her grandfather stayed when he initially started going to NC State. So wonderful girls.
I have a trivia question, and it's kind of chicken and egg.
Okay.
Tiffany worked at Miller Beer, and as I recall, most of the time I mean, we've been to how many meals together? Would you say? How many times have we had? 50, 100? I mean,
yes, a lot.
Right. And it seems to me most of the time you got Miller Beer. So is that true?
that is true, because when she was working,
which came first?
Her working for Philip Morris and Miller Brewing Company is what came first. That's when I started drinking Miller.
And that's loyalty for you. You've been loyal for a long time since, for decades.
It is true. It is true. You got to be true to the company that you are working for. And when she was at Philip Morris owned Miller Brewing Company, and we purchased Post cereal, and we purchased Kraft cheese, and we purchased Miller Brewing Company, Miller Lite. And when she went to Miller Lite, it was the exact same thing, and that's what we drank. And that's what started. And I've continued on down that path.
If you could go back to when you were first leaving college, when you were just getting ready to decide what you wanted to do in life, if you could go back and give yourself advice, what advice would you give the 22-year-old Ryan Dotson?
Number one, don't be so cocky. It is just because someone doesn't understand something that you think is absolutely simple does not mean that they are stupid in any stretch of the means. But what it means is that they are experts in other areas, and you by all means could learn from them in those areas in which they are an expert.
So can you describe an example of where you learned from someone that that wasn't an expert, that you were in a real life situation and you learned something about business from someone that was not an expert? And if you can't, I'll give you
other than all my conversations with you, let's see. Go right ahead.
Well, I have a great story that I'll end this with. We got a call on April 15th, on Saturday, April 15th, one year, and if April 15th falls on a Saturday, of course, Monday is the deadline, so it's April 17th. But the TV station in Los Angeles had called one of our franchisees in Los Angeles and said, we'd like to come out and do a story. So he called us up, and no one was working in the marketing department. He claimed, this is his claim, no one was working in the marketing department, and how horrible we were for not supporting him and not giving him his advice on what he should do and how he should handle the TV interview. So I went to the director of marketing and said, I showed, gave the email and the 150 words of condemnation. And she said, well, that guy's like the worst franchise in the country. He only does 100 tax returns. He doesn't attend any training. He doesn't get on the phone calls. He doesn't do anything. And I said, well, see this, you can learn from even people that are unsuccessful and are not confident, because what we did is we changed, and hundreds of offices are going to be called during the tax season to be visited by or invited on a TV show. And so let's put that as part of the training, and that should be part of the operating manual. What to do when you go on a TV show. So you can learn from each and every person, no matter how talented, how experienced, you need to be a sponge for learning and growing. Final words, Ryan.
Final words, but number one, believe in yourself. Number two, be humble and listen. If you listen more than you speak, you're really going to understand, where your franchisees are, where they want to go, and you're going to learn a lot of things, along the way. And last one, find a mentor, find someone who can get out there, kind of like you are to me, John, is that can teach you and let you know about their life experiences, so to provide guidance on what you're going through.
And you know what? You're paying it forward. And that's the best reward for me. And the best way to repay me is by paying it forward. Thank you for this hour. It went very quickly. And look forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, John.
Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. And we'll talk to you next week with Eric Van Horn. Thanks, Ryan.